The future of orthopedic practice is obviously being impacted by artificial intelligence. No industry, no specialty, no domain has been spared. So, as we look as moving forwards in our practice, how is it generative AI is making a difference? I'm not talking about hard AI, image manipulation, image diagnosis. We're talking about what AI can help us in our day-to-day clinical practice. So everything in healthcare is heavily data driven. We collect data from a point of contact with our patients, from our x-rays, from our surgical findings. Everything is data, and data consumes a lot of resources for storing, manipulation, and summarizing and synthesizing. That is what we do in healthcare. And so, one of the greatest impacts of generative AI in healthcare has been because of this. We have large data sets which then can be easily analyzed, and insights can be obtained, and the foundation of predictive personalized care. So when we look at our where can AI help us in our clinical practice, we one of the commonest areas is because of our large X-rays, which forms the mainstay of our practice. And here is where diagnosis, you can even try this. You take a difficult fracture, take an image of it, make sure that whatever you are using is data protected. Do not upload anything that is identifiable. You can upload and see and ask AI to help you with your diagnosis. It may not be 100% accurate, but up to 90% sensitivity has been recorded. So in a junior doctor, he may miss it, but this is very useful. So AI's role is immediately available for us to use and try. So this is something you can try with your AI that you. Another area in which AI is helping is in surgical planning, where you could upload the images, and this is very useful for AI assisted templating. And also, this makes gives us an opportunity to have like a second opinion. And here is where a RAG chatbot, which we'll come to later, which is the recommendation of the Singapore guidelines for the use of AI in healthcare. RAG chatbots are AI chatbots that are based on documents that you use, you upload, are validated. We'll look at an example of that later. And the other thing is this sort of thing you can make bespoke planning in terms of specific for your patient's needs. And soon I think 3D scanning can be performed with multiple views of images that you take with your camera. Another thing is obviously robotic surgery, and here is where autonomous surgery is on the horizon. There are some procedures that can be used where AI can perform autonomously based on pre-learned material. Like for example, a simple straightforward percutaneous fixation can easily be performed by generative AI robotic surgery. We are currently working on the use of remote mentoring using smart glasses, where the remote surgeon is able to assist and aid novice in the operating theater using smart glasses with heads-up display with audio and 4K recording. These are all very useful systems, and this is what the future is going to be, and it's going to make tremendous difference, and we need to be ready for it. The other thing is the digital twin. This is the future. Digital twins, where we can use the multimodal nature of the generative AI, converging all the data about the patient and creating a twin that can be used to manipulate and to see whether the perioperative risk can be analyzed and prediction can be done so that a desirable outcome can be obtained. Now, the most important thing in generative AI is the human element. Though AI is nothing but a large repository of database from which the statistical and probabilistic tokens are decided by the generative AI machine, does not have intelligence in any way. Because of the large data set, it works through a probabilistic prediction of what the outcome or response should be based on the prompt. So the human element is what is important to keep in mind, and that's why the surgeon will still be required. So they ensure that they understand the algorithms and what were used to make come out to provide the response. So that's where the RAG chatbot is an important component, because you know that the data set from which the AI gives you the response is a valid data set. There's no fake data. And we need to move beyond the hype of AI, and we need to have evidence-based usefulness of the AI in our practice. And this is some of the research we are doing now, where we have created a lot of AI chatbots, agents, in which we are trying to see whether they are reliable and valid in clinical use. And in the doctor-patient relationship is where the human connection cannot be provided by the AI. But having said that, there are some AI robots that can provide empathy because of the fact that they have no emotion, and therefore they are not affected. They're constantly constant and always supportive. But this open for the orthopedic surgeon. I think it is important for us to realize that we are the one who provide the human connection. Now, Singapore has come up with one of the only very robust guidelines for AI intelligence in healthcare. You can find this, Google for this, and you can read it. And I think it's an important component for how we use AI. So one of the important aspects of this guideline is the data set used for any form of AI use in healthcare has to be a RAG chatbot. RAG means Retrieval Augmented Generative Chatbot. I'll give you an example later in the video. We will go through how we could create one with a free AI. And we are sure of the validity of the documents, and so therefore it's no hallucination, which is fake news churned out by AI. The development of any AI that is involved in healthcare cannot be done without the senior clinician in the loop. And in Singapore, it is prescribed that a senior consultant, that means someone who has more than 5 years post-specialist qualification, must be within the design team building an AI for healthcare, and must be all the way through in the deployment and the testing. And the governance frameworks are very, very, very straightforward. There must be open transparency, accountability, and validity testing, where the clinician must be involved in the testing of the validity of the response. And it's also important that accountability has to be there. If AI makes a response and a decision is taken, it is not AI that is responsible. It is the clinician who is accountable for the outcome. So the surgeon's role is where he plays the judgment. He provides the oversight to make sure that the model is working and its performance is maintained. Audits have to be done. Just as we do with human surgeons, the AI has to be audited, and there must be an audit trail of how the AI provided the response and how we accepted the response. And this is part of the governance framework. Now, in terms of these AI tools, you can have the AI tool helping in the process, like for example, clinical ambient recording and the provision of transcripts to improve our administrative tasks in clinical medicine. Or it can be a device that assists in making a decision. So we have a chatbot that helps us to screen for carpal tunnel. And so that eventually will become an AI device, because it's going to make a diagnosis, and that has got a much more rigorous pathway according to these guidelines for us to implement in the clinical setting. So the roadmap for the modern practice is first is for us to be understand and be aware of the various AI tools. In this short lecture, I won't be able to demonstrate how you could use it on a active basis, and that's where I've been for the last 3 years conducting workshops and providing AI capability for physicians globally. And it is to be able to understand, use, and adopt AI into your practice, eventually integrating. The problem that we have had is leadership has not have the resources or the capabilities of implementing. So we are in a bit of a bottleneck because we have trained physicians on how to use AI, but they cannot fully integrate into their practice because leadership there's a bottleneck in leadership. So the role in predictive analysis is phenomenal, and we can very confidently help counsel our patients towards the outcome that they expect. And as we move forward, we will see the agentic role of AI, where some of our mundane repetitive tasks will be taken over by AI. Later, we'll see some examples of how we are researching with some chatbots to help us in our practice. So the future is our surgical practice is going to be augmented, where the surgeon is going to be elevated. We are at our disposal multiple repository of knowledge base that we can anytime, just in time, be able to access to help us with our decision making. And later you will see how you could use generative AI as a decision support system. And I think at the end of the day, we want to make surgery more safe, more efficient, and more patient-centric as we move forwards. And AI is going to help us. And I think this is where we need to incorporate generative AI use within the curriculum for orthopedic training. I'm trying very hard, but this is where I make all the resources available, and I'm very happy to share those resources with you. I hope you have found this useful, and I'm happy to take questions and have discussions with you. I'll leave my email. Please feel free. The rest of this will show you some use case of videos of how generative AI I use in my clinical practice.
Over the past few years, the way we integrate artificial intelligence into professional work has changed fundamentally. We have moved through 4 distinct stages, from simple chatbots to intelligent assistants to autonomous agents, and now to something more pervasive, AI embedded as a co-worker within the desktop environment itself. This presentation maps that evolution, examines what each stage actually means for practice, and asks what it requires of us as professionals in healthcare and education. Before examining each stage in depth, it helps to see the full arc. The 4 stages are chatbot, assistant, agent, and co-work. Each label represents not just a product category, but a structural shift in what AI can do, how it relates to the human user, and what kind of professional engagement it demands. Moving from left to right, the role of AI expands from reactive text generation to ambient co-presence within the working environment. The human role does not disappear, it migrates. We will trace that migration across all 4 stages. The chatbot is where most professionals first encountered generative AI. It operates as a turn-based conversational interface. You pose a question, it responds, and the exchange ends there. There is no memory of what you asked yesterday. There is no awareness of the broader task you are working on. And critically, there is no ability to act on anything outside the conversation window. The capabilities are real and useful. You can generate text, synthesize information, draft communications, and summarize documents on demand. But the user remains entirely in charge of sequencing, managing, and integrating those outputs into actual work. In clinical or educational terms, this is the equivalent of a highly knowledgeable colleague who answers one question at a time, but has no memory of previous encounters. Valuable, but limited in scope. The assistant paradigm introduces something qualitatively different, context that persists. An AI assistant can hold a working thread across a session, tracking your goals, your drafts, your evolving brief, without needing you to re-explain everything with each message. For a researcher developing a systematic review protocol or a curriculum designer iterating on learning outcomes across multiple sessions, this changes the texture of collaboration. The AI begins to function more like a capable junior colleague. You can build on previous exchanges rather than starting from scratch. The limitation that remains is one of reach. The assistant can support work, but it cannot act on external systems. It can draft a letter but not send it, propose a search strategy but not execute the database query. Human mediation is still required at every boundary. The agent paradigm marks a structural rupture. An AI agent does not merely generate outputs, it takes actions. It can access tools, query external systems, execute multi-step task sequences, and respond to the results of those actions, iterating through a plan rather than producing a single artifact. In practical terms, an agent instructed to conduct a literature search can retrieve abstracts, screen them against inclusion criteria, compile a data extraction table, and return a structured synthesis, executing the entire pipeline with minimal human intervention at each step. In administrative workflows, it can retrieve calendar data, draft communications, update records, and route information across platforms. This is no longer a conversation. It is a managed process. And that distinction carries significant governance implications. Agents operating with reduced oversight can propagate errors, act on ambiguous instructions in unintended ways, and interact with sensitive systems without the contextual judgment that a human professional would apply. Validation checkpoints, clearly defined scope boundaries, and audit trails are not optional features at this stage. They are safety-critical infrastructure. The most recent paradigm shift, represented by Anthropic's co-work product, changes something more fundamental than capability. It changes the spatial and cognitive relationship between the professional and the AI layer. Rather than opening a chat interface to query an AI, the professional works within an environment where AI is already present, observing the working context, accessing files and applications, taking actions on the local system. Co-work is designed for non-developer users, clinicians, educators, administrators who need AI capability embedded in their everyday file and task management without technical mediation. It sits between the agent model and full automation, maintaining human direction at meaningful decision points. The key concept here is ambient. AI is no longer a tool you reach for. It is a layer you work within. That is a fundamentally different model of human-machine collaboration, and it demands a fundamentally different set of professional habits and institutional responses. This brings us to a critical question about agency. At the chatbot stage, human agency is dominant. Around 95% of the cognitive and operational work belongs to the professional. By the co-work stage, the balance has shifted. AI carries approximately 75% of operational task execution, while the human role concentrates increasingly on direction, oversight, and judgment. This is not a story of diminishment. It's a story of migration. The human expert does not become less important, but the nature of that expertise changes. Execution yields to judgment. Operational control yields to strategic oversight. The professional who understands this shift and positions themselves accordingly is not replaced by AI. They are operating at a higher level of leverage than was previously possible. Expanded capability and expanded risk are not separate concerns. They are the same phenomenon viewed from different angles. At each stage, what AI can do grows, and at each stage, the framework required to govern that capability must grow with it. The chatbot required a basic form of AI literacy, the ability to prompt effectively, evaluate outputs critically, and recognize when a model is confabulating. The agent requires formal governance, validation checkpoints, error recovery protocols, clear scope boundaries, and mechanisms for human override. And the ambient co-work model requires something harder to mandate, an institutional and professional culture that has genuinely absorbed both literacy and governance, and that applies them as a matter of routine rather than exceptional scrutiny. The gap between what AI can do and what organizations are prepared to govern is not a technical problem. It is a professional development and institutional design problem. That is where the work lies. Across all 4 stages, the applications in healthcare and education follow a consistent pattern. Early stages support cognitive and administrative tasks. Later stages begin to act on clinical and pedagogical systems directly. In the chatbot stage, a clinician uses AI to draft discharge summaries or search the literature. In the assistant stage, a medical educator iterates on a curriculum design over multiple sessions. In the agent stage, AI is executing evidence synthesis pipelines or generating adaptive learning pathways. In the co-work stage, AI operates as an ambient layer within the electronic health record environment or across the teaching and research workflow. The common thread is that domain expertise, clinical judgment, educational design knowledge, ethical reasoning remains irreplaceable at every stage. What changes is the operational substrate on which that expertise operates. The question for every practitioner is, am I positioning my expertise at the level the current stage requires? The trajectory across these 4 stages is consistent, from reactive and bounded to contextually persistent to environmentally active to ambiently integrated. Each stage embeds AI more deeply into professional workflow, not as a replacement for human expertise, but as a progressive restructuring of the task environment in which that expertise operates. The human role migrates from execution to direction, from operational control to ethical judgment. Governance frameworks must pace capability, not follow it after the fact. The chatbot required literacy, the agent requires governance, the co-work model requires institutional culture that has absorbed both. The question for practitioners is not whether to engage with this evolution. That choice is no longer available. The question is how to position human expertise, ethical responsibility, and domain knowledge within a workflow architecture that is changing structurally, not merely incrementally.
Hello and welcome to this demonstration on how to use Notebook LM. So you go to notebooklm.com and from here you create a new notebook. This is a Google product. And then you come to this screen, and what you need to do now is to add resources. You need to add resources that are valid, reliable. So you have 2 ways. You can either upload your PDF documents that you already have, or you can even put URL of YouTube's, any documents that are validated by you. Or you could just use Google to screen for articles for you, basically like doing a Google search. So you can type in your search from the Omni box of a topic that you want, and you can either just choose the webs to look at the web, or you can do a fast research. You can also do a deep research. However, deep research takes a fair bit of time. In this demo, I'm just going to use the fast research. And my topic is the role of AI in gynae oncology. So what this does when you hit return, it does something like a Google search, but it searches repositories of articles on the web that are more reliable, like from knowledge database, from journals like PubMed. And once it has searched for the articles, like here, it takes us about 10 articles per batch, and in the free version, you're given 30. Then you need to scan through the documents, and ideally you should look at each of the documents, and this is where time is spent to make sure you validate the sources and you import them. And this will bring in the documents, and then you can add in another 10 or another 20. The free version, you have only 30 documents per notebook, and you can create many notebooks. In the paid version, you can create up to 300 documents within one notebook that you have created. So here we're seeing there are two red documents, which means these are either blocked by paywall or they are dynamic websites that are not possible. So I'm going to add another 10. So I'm going to put a different topic now. So I'm going to say the role of AI in clinical practice, and then see what the documents there are. So I've basically creating a repository of approximately 20 documents from which we can then have an AI chatbot to interrogate those documents and produce responses. So here we are. So we have about, minus the 2, I think we got about 18 documents that we have into our repository. It has immediately summarized it and given a topic which is quite appropriate. You can always edit that. So this is what Notebook LM, the first part that you have to do, spend time to create the repository. This is a knowledge management system, and depending on what documents you put in, which you should validate. So you can see now that this is a 3-column platform. On the left is all your sources, which is your repository of knowledge base that you have curated yourself and validated its reliability. In the middle is your AI chatbot, where you can check just like any other AI and questions. You can ask it whatever questions, and it will obtain the responses only from the documents that you have uploaded in the left column. So therefore, this is what is known as a RAG chatbot, a retrieval augmented generative chatbot. It will not answer any question that's outside of this. This improves the integrity and reduces hallucination, which is one of the big problems with generative AI. So here we have typed in a question, and it is now collecting data from the repository. Now here you can see that, and that's a pretty good summary. I mean, I'm not an oncologist, but reading it, my basic knowledge says it looks pretty good. And all these came from the repository that we have curated all this while. Now the good thing about this is this is a good note. I'm going to save it as a note, and you can see it goes on to the right side, which is the column called the studio. This note, therefore, can be used by others. You can share this notebook with your students, with your colleagues, and with any external individuals that you would like to review them. And each of the statement provides in-text citation, and it tells you which document it came from, so you have that confidence level that this is evidence-based synthesis that you're getting and not some random. Even if you clicked on it, it goes to the document for you to identify exactly where in the document that statement was made from. Now, to prove to you that this is not a generic search engine, I've typed in who's the president of the USA, and because it only answers from the repository of documents that are available on the left side, you should not have an answer. So this proves to you that this is a RAG chatbot. It only responds to data that is available on the resources that you have curated and uploaded. So here it is giving me the answer. It doesn't know who the president of the US. The other advantage of this notebook is you can set the settings right in the top, how you want this chatbot to behave. You want to speak as a learning guide. You can even therefore give instructions if it is for teaching purposes, what type of teaching, like the Socratic method. I prefer the Socratic method rather than giving answers, so students can therefore be questioned and learn more. You can even put in the Feynman method of how to explain to a 5-year-old, 10-year-old. So this is a setting, you can put it in such a way from the beginnings. You can put specific prompts so that it can even act as an intelligent tutoring system where you'll give information and then ask questions and provide personalized learning. On the right side here, we see what is known as a studio, where you can create a lot of graphics, videos, and audios. So I'm going to click on them. They do take a bit of time. You can press on the pen button and edit them. So you can just specifically say, create a slides for a lecture on carcinoma of the cervix, and it will just do that. Pulling the documents, the information and data and images from your set of documents. So this is very useful. There's podcasts, quizzes, flashcard, and study guides. And study guides are quite useful for creating intelligent tutoring system, and you can do specialized guides. The data table is very useful for data extraction in systematic reviews. File to produce all these artifacts here on the right side in Studio, and the first one is it's a video overview of a topic, which is diagnosing cancer with AI. So here it is, a video has been produced.
All right, let's get right into it. We're looking at a quiet revolution that's happening at the micro and see how accurate it is.
The fuel for all of this learning is just data, data, and more data. The AI
So you can see it's quite a useful tool. The next, we created a podcast. And in this podcast, you can see.
Today, we're absolutely going to geek out. But
Yeah, you can see that it created. You can even interrupt it, and so you click on the interactive section where you can therefore join the conversation.
in how we got. Whoa.
Oh, hi there.
Fourth wall? Let's hear it.
Can you explain to me what is generative AI?
That is a fantastic question.
And actually super relevant to what we were discussing.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Absolutely.
We're talking about AI generally, but generative AI, or advanced generative adversarial networks, are a subset of deep learning.
Deep learning is a
So you can see the various modalities that you can create, and here we see a PDF of a slide lecture on AI in oncology. So this is a fantastic way of creating slides for your lectures based on that repository. Other things that we have is an infographic, and here's an infographics. You can edit this, you can ask it to do whatever you want. So here is the precision and all the stuff from the data set that you have uploaded. You can create quizzes, which is quite useful for your students and for recapping of knowledge. And you can create flashcards, which are useful for learning, where you can click on it, you can see the next, and you can play with that. And so the functionalities are amazing. And here is the data table. So it is created, you can edit this, what do you want in the first row. And so this is fantastic for systematic reviews, for data extraction, or with the data set that you have uploaded. And things like mind maps is quite exciting. You can see the mind map, you can click on it, and you can go deeper, and you can even go and see the original document to see what it says. So this is an excellent tool for understanding, deep diving, and also for teaching and learning. Moving forwards, you can see that it has got quite a useful set of data. You can create reports
Like you can ask it to write a report on it. You can do a briefing document, a study guide. I find a study guide quite useful for students, and so you can choose whatever you like to create reports. So there you have it. This is the basic functionality of Notebook LM. Now, when you're ready to share, then you click on the share button, and you can add groups to it. So what you do is, instead of restricted anyone with a link, and a full notebook if you're sharing with colleagues and learners and collaborators. But however, if you're sharing with a patient, I would probably just use the chat only. So once you do that, full notebook, you save it, and then you go back and, you go back and look at copy the link, and you can then paste it anywhere and share this notebook with anyone that you want. I hope you found that useful. Thank you and goodbye.
Hello, agentic AI is pervasive everywhere. For literature review, there are various tools you can use as an agentic AI. Here I'm going to show you how Manners works as an AI agent for a quick systematic review. Here you can see that the Manners has commenced the process that is required to perform a systematic review. The thinking process is clearly documented based on a research question that I have posted to it. This research question was developed through a process of prompting with generative AI based on some clinical problems and questions that we had asked, and we got a good question that is comprehensive. In the next slide on the right, you can see how the comprehensive literature search was done across multiple databases and the screening and extract of data. Here you can see the selection of about 25 unique studies, and then the screen and extraction data was performed, showing all the step-by-step methods and tasks that were done. And finally, you can see the synthesis of the finding based on quality, assessment, and evidence table. And on the right, you can see then it proceeds to write the systematic review report, and the steps are again iterated. And finally, it proceeds to deliver the final systematic review to the user. And here you see the systematic review with the Prisma diagram and with both the studies, the list of all studies, and the full review either as a Word document or as a PDF. The Prisma diagram is not the classical, this can always be converted. It also provides a validation checklist. Now this is the important part. Here is the human in the loop. As you can see on the right, it has given each study the DOI so that you can do the validation by reading the studies and ensuring all the data that is in the report is truly available. This therefore removes all hallucination and the human validation of the data set in the writing of the report. This is an extremely useful exercise for the systematic review. I hope you found that useful. Thank you and good luck.